darn well better be good at it, because we're not called to be average at stuff. And if we were the 10th best race team, you wouldn't be talking to me and no one would care what we think. That's another Daveism, by the way. Nobody cares what you think if you stink. So if you better be good at what you do if you want to have any influence at all in anything.
Welcome to Wait, What? Sportsbiz Chat with DP and McGhee, the podcast that takes an often irreverent, sometimes cynical, and on occasion even a serious look at the business of sports. I'm your co-host, David 𝗏𝗺𝗏.
And I'm Tim McGhee.
Well, we are recording this week on a Tuesday, Veterans Day here in the United States, so a heartfelt thank you to all the veterans that have served this country and to those men and women that are actively serving. Been a rather busy last few days in the sports biz. On Sunday, we saw the passing of one of the most influential sports executives of our lifetimes, I think it's fair to say. And surprise, surprise, we have another sport embroiled in a betting scandal. I don't like to lead the witness, though. So, Tim, what's on your mind?
Yeah, obviously you've been so busy you couldn't even shave. So I'm assuming that's for November.
Oh, you noticed that I've let it grow a little longer. How about that? Thank you. I'm wow. Yes.
Yeah, I think we can talk about Commissioner 𝗙𝗧𝗏 in a little bit, but I do want to talk about another week, another gambling scandal. Emmanuel 𝗏𝗂𝗏 and Luis Ortiz both were indicted, pitchers for the Cleveland Guardians, for taking as little as 5,000 bribes for trying to throw particular pitches. Something has to give, and I know Major League Baseball and the sports books have taken very swift action to limit the amount of prop bets on an individual pitch to $200. Somebody's going to build a better mousetrap. Somebody's going to be able to game that.
The thing that's so amazing, and you just pointed out that it was a small amount of money for these pitchers that are making good money, and we've talked about that issue a lot. But my understanding of this is that they were doing it to help friends back in the Dominican Republic. Like, it was friends of theirs that they were basically agreeing to throw this whole system into, craziness over helping them win the bet, and then they took a cut of that. Obviously these videos have been out there with them just throwing balls in the dirt and whatnot. But the fact that there are prop bets on, what the speed of a pitch is going to be, for instance, going to be under or over a certain speed. It's so ridiculous how easy it becomes to game. And yeah, that's great that they can catch them, and it's great that it's regulated to the point that they can catch them. But like you said, I mean, it's just too simple to try to game the system. And, assuming all of these things are proven out, which, they've been investigating this particular case for a while, and we just had the indictments come down. But so it might be about the money and it might not be about the money, but there's 1,000 reasons that an athlete could get involved in this stuff, and not even to mention the people that are setting up on trying to, game the system. It's just, good on MLB for moving quickly on changing some things, but it's not changing. I think that's what we're seeing.
It's always about the money.
Well, it's about the money for someone. That's the point.
Right.
It's about
maybe
the money
not
for someone.
Maybe not directly for the players, but it's always about the money.
Right.
It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. We're going to be able to talk about this next week, next month, next year. It's not going to stop because gambling in professional sports won't stop.
The leagues cast their die on this some time ago, and it seems as though the level of involvement, cooperation, partnership just seems to be, stronger all the time. And from a league and team standpoint, it's largely because of the money, and it is fan engagement. We know that gambling is a way to keep fans engaged in your sport. And from that standpoint, I guess that's a positive in terms of growth, but it seems to me it's becoming one awfully risky way to do it, especially when the whole concept behind betting has always been that there is integrity in what you're betting on, that no one has any more information than is accessible, and that it's fair competition on the field. And this is the ultimate, especially with the number of these prop bets going out or that are available. I mean, you talk about problem gambling. that if you're gambling on this level of stuff that regularly and it's that quickly moving, I mean, man, there are a lot of other things that seem to be thrilling in life for me that don't involve this. But
no, I think the ease of betting, the number of things that you can bet on. Some people have addictive personalities and will become addicted to gambling, and it is an illness, and I won't cast aspersions on somebody who's suffering from an illness, but why are you making it easier for these people to do that and giving them, something has to give here. On the same note, talking about gambling, this more on the business side, ESPN and Penn Entertainment, who had entered into an agreement a couple of years ago for Penn Entertainment to be sort of the engine behind ESPN bets. They've split up. They've ended their relationship early, which is going to save Penn Entertainment hundreds of millions of dollars in royalties and stock options or warrants that they were obligated to pay ESPN. So, and now ESPN is in business with DraftKings.
Yeah, it's not that ESPN is getting out of the sports betting business. It's interesting because that's the second big-time breakup for Penn, right? Because Barstool had partnered with Penn Gaming at a point, and then that relationship broke off. So I'm curious just about that side. I haven't really looked into it that much about what that means about Penn.
Are you saying that Penn Entertainment is the Taylor Swift of betting companies?
I don't know. Well, Taylor Swift always seems to land on her feet, so I don't know if that's a good or bad thing on Penn, or they just, it was a wise decision from both parties to go a different way. But yeah, I mean, I think but that's that whole other element that the media companies are so involved in it. Not only in that they may have their own partnership or branded licensed books, say, but how much the media companies that are carrying, whether it's CBS or NBC or ESPN or Fox, how much the betting is a featured part of watching the game now. And is that the only way people are watching still? I think that betting certainly has helped increase or made sure that NFL viewership continues to remain high, or for that matter, any sport. We're saying NFL right now because of the partners I just mentioned. But the fact that these lines are listed so often to the point of, odds of winning, as the game progresses. Talk about just being front and center as the driver of, of what these games are becoming, what these leagues are becoming. And I think we have gotten to a point where it's beyond just the negative outcomes that we can see happening with people's lives and so forth. I mean, it's going to get to a point where, as someone that doesn't bet, take over so much of the broadcast that I'm gonna have to look for something else. I mean, is there going to be a safe space for non-sports bettors at some point on a broadcast? Is there going to be an alternate broadcast that doesn't bring up betting? That might be a good option.
Yeah, that instead of the Manning cast, right? Of the non-betting cast, or in addition to the Manning cast. Yeah, I tune it out. It doesn't bother me that much, but I could see how it would bother a lot of people.
Maybe we have to get somebody on that actually does actively bet and go through some of these things. Sometimes we talk about target audience a lot on this show as brand people, and I don't want to be unfair, and maybe I'm just very boring on these topics, but to me, a lot of the stuff that I hear just maybe blows me away more than it does most people, because I don't get what that draw is. And I want to be fair to those that do, I suppose.
Yeah, my understanding is it actually it releases a chemical in the brain. So you get a thrill, a heuristic thrill. So I don't know. Yeah, I would like to talk to somebody. I can't speak to it personally. So what else?
We don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but, you and I came up in this business when 𝗙𝗪𝗼 was the commissioner of the NFL. And I think sometimes because Rozelle is considered, well, not the original, he was such a big figure and gets so much love for all the things that he did. And 𝗙𝗪𝗼 was a little quieter. And the NFL has had a very stable group of commissioners.
Yeah.
𝗙𝗵𝗄 served for 17 years, turned it over to Goodell, who obviously serves now. Before that, Rizal had been commissioner for 30 years. And 𝗙𝗵𝗄 was fairly quiet. He was an attorney by trade, had been the league's attorney, a very, very, very successful one. But his tenure was amazing.
Yeah.
What happened during his league in terms of revenue, in terms of stadiums, in terms of the Rooney Rule, which I think is an unbelievable legacy. So I was always a big fan, and I think as we reflect back on him, given when you and I were coming up in this industry, I think he deserves a heck of a lot of praise, and it's nice to see all that coming in.
They say you never want to be the guy who replaces the guy, and the guy being Pete Rozelle. You want to be the guy who replaces the guy who replaces the guy, so to speak. But 𝗙𝗵𝗄 left a legacy, and in a much shorter tenure than obviously Rozelle had and what Goodell has now, but he developed a 4-division format in each conference. More than 2/3 of the teams are playing in stadiums that didn't exist when he started as commissioner. Oversaw the expansion that brought in Carolina, Jacksonville, Houston, reinstated the Cleveland franchise after the Browns moved to Baltimore and became the Ravens. You mentioned the Rooney Rule, oversaw labor peace while also having a salary cap put in place. And then he had to steer the ship after Katrina and the devastation it wrought on New Orleans, and then also, of course, September 11th.
Right. Yeah, a lot of things happened. A lot of things happened for sure. And I think as he handed over the reins to Roger Goodell, he had the house in very solid order. And we talk about it all the time that the NFL, from a sheer commercialization, management of their assets and their strengths, is far, far ahead of any of the other American-based leagues.
Yep.
So I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. What else major do you have?
Oh, I don't know if it's major. We can go from the sublime to the ridiculous pretty quickly on this show. Tom Brady, congratulations to Tom Brady and Team Brady for winning the second E1 boat racing series. But my question is Tom Brady going to celebrate with the dog that he cloned? Robin Williams in his stand-up act used to say that cocaine was God's way of telling you were making too much money. I think that cloning a dog is a pretty good indication as well.
Yeah. I mean, he looks amazing, right? You're starting to wonder.
Are you talking about Brady or the dog?
Or his dog. I see a picture of the dog, but I'm assuming the dog looks great.
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, if the dog doesn't perform, he's just going to clone another one and just keep a very young version of that dog, I'm guessing, which is what he's trying to do with himself. And I would not put it past him to be planning the cloning of himself at this point.
He could put his head next to Ted Williams' head frozen cryogenically out in a lab somewhere.
Yeah. Brady's got his hands in a lot of interesting things, doesn't he?
You said you haven't seen the dog.
No, I haven't. What kind of dog was it?
I think it was some sort of retriever, but it's exactly the type of dog you would think somebody like Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen would have, right? Because I guess apparently they got the dog when they were still married.
He's putting a lot of dogs out of work, like. He could take on a rescue or something. I'm not a dog owner, so I'm not. Anyone's choices on dogs is fine with me.
I'm
on record of saying I think there are too many in New York City, but that's me.
I am a proud owner of a rescue dog.
Yeah, nice.
We got a couple more minutes, right?
Yeah.
Want to fill a little bit of more time before our guest comes on?
We can do that.
All right, so let's go back from the ridiculous to the more ridiculous, if you don't mind. Word out of the White House last week was that the president and people in his inner circle thought it would be a fantastic idea to name the new Commander Stadium after Trump. So let's forget for a second that the jokes write themselves, not the least of which was there already is an Orange Bowl, which was my favorite. But what kind of hubris and ego must one have to even float that out as an idea? I mean, and listen, we look at it from a business perspective, and the Commanders would be foregoing. I assume that, like everything else in this world, Trump would not be paying to have his name on the stadium. The Commanders would be foregoing anywhere from $15 to $25 million a year.
Well, that's where I think it gets a little weird. Now, let's take. Wait.
That's the line. That's the line at which it gets weird.
Well, no, from the totally weird. We got to do our normal caveat on this. We don't come onto the show and say, let's have a political discussion. But as we've said many times, with this particular administration, there is an involvement on so many things that they're doing that are intersecting with the sports. Now, the president and politicians from Congress, as well as I'm sure people from his administration, I think Pete Hegseth was there, went to the Commanders game this weekend. They got beat by the Lions in a home game there. So he went there. He actually did an interview. He appeared in the booth with Fox, with the Fox broadcast team led by Kenny Albert. And the discussion wasn't all that political, and I think that's kind of good. They talked about a few things. But he was in there for a while, like more than you would normally suspect. So
not as long as he was on stage after the
where he wouldn't leave. So
the World Club.
The White House is saying that he is the one most responsible for getting this thing over the line, and not that the administration didn't have some involvement, but it was gone. It was starting well before this.
It was the Biden administration that transferred the land from the federal government to the city.
𝗂𝗄𝗄, much in the same vein, I'm sure, as Infantino, is figuring out a way to manage this because this administration can cause a lot of problems for people trying to do things. So they had him out. It was all that. He, I'm sure, is entertaining the discussion. I don't know how much Trump is talking to Josh Harris in particular about his desire to have his name on it. I was just in Chicago this past weekend. I'm reminded Trump likes to have his name on there. There's very little that's seen on buildings in Chicago except the Trump Tower, and it's freaking massive. So, given what's just been happening with the East Wing, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, say this is a $25 million plus a year, 20-year type of naming rights deal, corporate naming rights deal that the Commanders would expect to get following, what their past, which was one of the more expensive ones in FedEx Field, their former home field, is you can get corporate donors to throw the money up and say, we want it to say Trump. They're getting their favors from the administration, and they're probably still extracting the benefits that a normal naming rights deal would do. Now, I would suggest, if I was advising 𝗂𝗄𝗄, and Josh Harris in particular, not to take that deal because it's fraught with so many problems. Anyway, but that's not an inconceivable idea with this administration and with everything that's going on, and that money would be easily raised, in my view. Is that crazy? Well, it's crazy, but
I'd require that to pay the entire 20-year deal up front. Freaking sponge tech all over again.
It really is kind of unbelievable how we're not able to avoid that, because these are the center of very major stories, and it's going to continue during this, because we have a World Cup right around the corner, and there's going to be more news on that. Listen, hopefully everybody had a good time, and there's no further pressing of this, because I think it would be a really, really bad precedent. And really, it would be bad.
Somebody needs to stand up and just say no.
That's too perfect of a time to end this first segment. We have a really great guest coming on, one I think you're going to be excited to listen to, and a very timely one. So we'll be back in a sec.
It's time for our guest.
Just over a week ago in Phoenix, NASCAR closed its 2025 schedule in dramatic, if not controversial, fashion. Our guest this week is an executive that was part of every turn and twist during this emotional 2025 season. Dave Alpern is the president of Joe Gibbs Racing, the NASCAR team owned by and named for the legendary Joe Gibbs. Now, during his nearly 23 years with JGR, Dave has been integral in every aspect of the operation and is a major reason that the race team has achieved so much success, including operating 4 NASCAR Cup teams, 4 Xfinity Series, soon to be O'Reilly Auto Parts Series cars, winning 5 Cup championships, 4 Xfinity titles, and possessing an enviable sponsorship roster. Coach may be the one with his name on the stationery, but there's no question Pern is a critical cog in this success story. So Dave, welcome to Wait, What?
Well, thanks for having me. Still a little bit too soon to be talking about Phoenix, but I appreciate that. I realized you had to go there.
Well, we're going to go there a little bit in the first question too,
That's
and
okay.
I apologize for that.
Hey, I will make one correction. I will add, this is just dating myself, but I'm actually at almost 33 years, not 23.
No, I don't say that, because that just makes me sound that much
Another
older, because
10
this is
on
all
there.
based on how long we've known
And
each
I
other.
knew you at the beginning, so yes, you know what that means.
That's you're
30.
right.
Yeah,
You're right.
good times.
Go
David,
back and read-
David, that's
yeah.
when you tell him you met when you were 8.
That is true.
We almost did, because
we were in elementary school.
Because Pern did join, like, when we first met, he was pretty fresh.
Fresh off.
I'm not dating you, you're just dating me even worse, basically, is with that. All right, so we know this season didn't end exactly like you guys hoped for, with two drivers vying for that, including Denny, who's certainly one of the greatest drivers ever to race in NASCAR. And there's less than 2 weeks here, so I know there's not that much distance. But is there anything, looking back, you can offer any perspective on this? And by any measure, as Tim and I are fans of the sport, and we follow it from a business standpoint, there's no metric that wouldn't say it was a successful season other than not banking that championship. So any perspective that you want to share, we'd appreciate it.
There's performance and there's results. Our performance was outstanding. We led the most laps. And in terms of results, we won the most races. We won 14 races, which in the next gen era, since we've been building this, we used to build every part and piece ourselves. Now we essentially buy the parts. All the teams are the same. In the next gen era, no organizations won 14 races. So yeah, by many of those results and metrics, it was a wildly successful season. Pit stops, everything, except we didn't go home with the championship. And yeah, it's hard to swallow. You have a dominant season, and then really in the championship race, and we can talk about the format, which is going to change, but the format was the same for everyone. They have 4 cars that race for the championship in the last race, and we went to that and dominated it and led the most laps. And with 3 laps to go, if you'd have been on the ESPN percentage, it would have said 99.9% chance JGR is going to win the championship. And it's an interesting dynamic. We're the only sport where you can have a 30-0 lead late in the 4th quarter and lose on a fumble. That's exactly what happens with racing, because we're dealing with machines, and a machine crashes, causes a caution, the 30-0 lead gets nullified, and you do a restart and it's over. And so it's the way our sport works.
And it wasn't even Denny who fumbled the ball. It was William Byron who fumbled the ball.
It was somebody else. And I've said this to some folks, it was a championship 4 contender who wrecked, which I feel better about that, because had it been a person in the back, I would always say that's like being in the final foursome at the Masters, and on the last hole, having an amateur hit his ball into your group and move your ball or affect you'd say, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Well, that in racing, that's exactly what happens, because you got guys that have no business being there that literally are affecting the championship outcome with cautions or getting in the way. So all that to say, it's the way our sport is, and many of those things are what makes it great, but it also can make the championship outcome frustrating to both teams and fans, because generally people want the best team to win a championship. And in several cases over the last few years, that's not been the case in the NASCAR Cup Series.
You mentioned that there will be changes coming. So I guess 2-part question. What changes would you like to see in the playoff format going forward? Obviously, it's not going to make a difference this year, but if you continue to have that sort of great performance across your drivers, that could help in the future. And then what can you tell us about what you've heard so far from NASCAR about what is being considered?
Yeah, well, my answer would be, we get asked this a lot, I would like the format that rewards the best team most accurately. And I think, it used to be you just raced 36 races and whoever was leading in points. And I think that generally rewarded the best team. I do think there's something about having some sort of playoffs, something you work for during a quote regular season. So I don't know. I think if it were up to me, I like you race 26 races, then a certain number of cars make it into a playoff round that is 10 races, and your aggregate points during those 10 races reward a championship. And the reason I like that, I just like a variety of types of track. I mean, in the format we've had now, if you were good at Miami or you're good at Phoenix, your team, you're probably going to win a lot of championships, because it's one race, one time, you got to finish ahead of 3 guys. I like road courses, super speedways, intermediate. So make a larger body of work so that a broken brake rotor doesn't dictate the championship. I mean, you could win 37 races, lead every lap of every race, lead every lap of the championship race, and have a flat tire keep you from winning the championship. There's something just inherently wrong about that. In terms of what I'm hearing, it will probably not be 36 race points, but it also won't be a one race shootout. It'll be somewhere in between that. It might be a round of 4 races or something like that. Your aggregate somewhere in there, but I do think they're going to head in the right direction with that. This particular format has definitely run its course with the fans.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking that question on, Dave. I imagine that SVG is probably thinking right now, like, how do you get to a point where you get into the
Yes.
championship and then somehow lobby for all road courses
All
in
road
the playoffs?
courses. Well, we would all probably just not show up. But I will say this: we're working on it. I know our drivers during the off season are working on the road courses. Crazy stat: for every one of SVG's road course wins, JGR was second every time. So I said we won 14 races. If he hadn't shown up, it'd be 19. So yeah, no, he's exceptional.
So we've covered how long you've been at Joe Gibbs Racing. It's been a long time. You have seen, we're going to take a little more 30,000 foot view here now, Pern. You've seen a lot of changes in the sport. What are the biggest ones that you've managed through, whether it's been a positive or negative?
Well, I'll start by saying Coach says this often, that in the NFL, he would say it changed about 30% a year. So every 3 or 4 years, it's almost totally different. And he got to NASCAR, said it's exactly the same. So one thing about pro sports, it's always evolving. It's always changing. When you look at the biggest changes, I mean, two things come to mind. Number one, the cars. Up until 5 years ago, 95% of the parts and pieces that went on our car, we made in-house. We were totally vertical. You control almost everything. NASCAR kind of ruled that out. We actually won 19 races in 2019, and I think that was part of the demise of, hey, we got to change this because it's hard for someone getting into the sport to compete with that, with the Hendricks, the Gibbs, the people building all their stuff. So we now buy everything from a single source third-party supplier. All the cars are essentially the same. So I'd say the technology that is radically different than it used to be, that we're kind of all racing the same thing. I mean, I think when I got in, you took mechanics and said, hey, you guys change tires and jack the car up. Now every person on our pit crew is a former D1 athlete, many former pro athletes. We have training facilities, trainers, strength coaches. It's really like a pro sport. We have 50 professional athletes that work here training. They don't do jobs in the shop. They're only pitting the cars on the weekend. So that has advanced greatly. So yeah, I think those are two huge things: the car itself, the pit stops. What hasn't changed is its people. You win with people. You don't win with tricks, parts, pieces. I mean, the names change, the parts change, but it comes down to people. One thing about auto racing that I would say is true of every series, especially ours: the greatest driver in the world has zero chance without a good car, and we can build the best car in the world and it has zero chance of winning without a good driver. So you do have to have both, and that has always been true ever since day one. And I think that's one of the reasons we've been successful.
Sponsorship is the lifeblood of any team's racing operations, including JGR. Tell us about how your team approaches partnerships, and what do you think is unique in what you offer vis-a-vis other teams within NASCAR, other properties that might be considered by brand marketers?
No, that's great. And I think every team has their own brand proposition. So to answer that, I'll start with JGR's North Star. And we may even talk about this later, but every decision we make, every capital purchase, every hire, we look at our North Star. We call it our one question. And that question is, does this make us go fast? Sounds really simple, but when we got into the sport competing against billionaires and people who could backstop their business if they had a bad year, we couldn't. The philosophy was, if we lead the most laps and win the most races, everything else will take care of itself. And one of the ways our proposition works is we are not the low-cost provider. So when we're talking to brands, we're basically charging more than most of our competitors are. But the value proposition is, you're going to lead the most laps, you're going to win the most races, your brand's going to be up front. Your brand is a leader in its industry. You should partner with someone who is a leader in their industry. So everything revolves around, and I think what differentiates us, we meet with brands and we'll tell them all the time, go talk to every other team. If you were selling a product at a retailer, your product may be better suited for Walmart or Kohl's. We're Nordstrom. We're exceptional products, superior service. We're not the low-cost provider, and that's okay if that doesn't match. So starting with that, that's why over the years you've seen the Mars and the FedEx and the DeWalt, the people that view themselves as the leader in their category, that want to pair with the leader. They don't want to run in the back, they want to run in the front, and they're willing to spend more to do that. And it's not just on the track. We then take it to another level. Many of our sponsors, we do their corporate social media for them. We're a boutique marketing agency, and so we are hopefully delivering such exceptional service and such great performance on the racetrack that we're going to price a little higher. And then what we build into that is the power of relationship. It goes back to people. We build relationships with our sponsors. We create these marketing solutions for these sponsors, and that's why they stay for a long time. So, and it all starts with performance. It all starts with coach, and really viewing the sponsors as our partners. They're not just sponsors. We are partners, part of our race team, and we become part of their business.
Tim, you vouch for that?
I can, as somebody who represents one of the proud sponsors of the 19 car in Chase Briscoe, Lance Crackers,
which also has an HBSE connection, which we can talk about. But
right.
But sponsors, what's so unique, and many of your listeners may not know this, the traditional stick and ball sports get roughly 10 to 15% of their revenue from sponsorship. And in NASCAR, it's 2/3 of our revenue. It's over 60%. And while that is scary and something that in a perfect world we'd love to change, because our business is often dictated on the whim of a C-level executive at a brand who may change their mind, or who may not be in that job tomorrow, and now we've got to talk to someone else about it. But on the flip side, if you're a brand, it's a great thing, because an inordinate amount of our time is spent towards making sure that we over deliver. Because it's a nice to have in other sports, it's a have to have in our sport. If you're a brand and you leave, we're out of business. So we have to make it work.
Yeah, I'd like to tell people that if every sponsor of the New York Yankees walked away from that team today, they'd still play a 162-game schedule next year. And if every sponsor walked away from a race team, they'd be sitting in the garage unable to run.
Well, that's it. That's a whole nother topic of how we're in that position, because in a perfect world, the percentage would not be that high, but it is where we are. And as a result, our survival depends on it.
Yeah, but it's also one of the reasons that sponsorship, I think, in motorsports, certainly in NASCAR, is so well respected by fans.
For sure.
And the importance of what it delivers. Now, I will say this, Pern, we have the most educated sports biz audience out there, so there's not that many factoids that are going to be thrown out that completely go over their head. But that one probably is something that is very unique. So we appreciate the specificity of the data point. We've talked about Denny a little because of the championship chase. You're star driver. I mean, you have a group of great drivers. Denny has been massively successful in this sport. He, interestingly, is a co-owner of another race team, 23XI, along with Michael Jordan. We've talked about them on this show, as you might suspect, quite a bit because of what's going on with them. But it is a unique situation that your driver is a co-owner of another team, and 23XI is a customer team of JGR. Talk about that dynamic. How does it benefit you? Is it an interesting challenge? I mean, I've been wanting to ask you this question, actually, because I find the whole setup quite interesting. Yeah,
on paper, it makes no sense if you were just looking at the sport and going, now wait, how? In fact, I'm speaking tomorrow I speak at business schools quite a bit. I'm speaking at Chapel Hill, and I try to articulate what this alliance is, and I can even see the looks on people's faces so it's complicated to explain. Denny loves the sport. I think Denny's dream was to own his own race team, and when he came to us originally and asked, I think we have a unique relationship with Denny, and we kind of gave some guardrails and said, hey, if we do this, we don't obviously want it to hurt Joe Gibbs Racing, but we want it to be something that you can have as your legacy. It is a really unique relationship. I will say they've done a really, really good job building that. Michael Jordan has always been a sort of a fan of Denny's and has been at the races over the years, really likes NASCAR. So it wasn't a huge surprise to us that he would jump into this. It was a surprise to others. So I know it's something they had talked about. They've done a really nice job putting that together. And I think when a race team starts, it's really difficult to have this, like I mentioned before, to compete with a Hendrick or a Gibbs. Ironically, your listeners may not know, when we started, we had an alliance with Hendrick. Rick Hendrick built our engines, helped us sold us some old cars. I think he wishes he had never done that now, 30 years later. He's like, these guys are pesky. But no, Joe and Rick have a great, Mr. H, have a great relationship. So it's not uncommon to do that for a few years while you get off your feet. And so Denny came to us and said, I'd like to do this. I'd like to be a Toyota team. I'd love to have a partnership with you. And so again, for those who don't know how an alliance works, basically we are selling IP. We are selling know-how to them. Imagine a menu of all the different things we do at Joe Gibbs Racing, where they go down and say, all right, well, we'd have to hire 20 people for this thing. So instead of doing that, here, we'll pay you for this item and this item and this item. And we come up with what would that cost? We get a fee from them on their end. It's worth it because they're going to have to do that themselves if they don't get it from us. We have 35 years of know-how that we can give them today that they don't have to. So there's a point where, eventually you start dropping menu items until you get to the point where you say, hey, we're going to do all of this ourselves. They're already doing that with pit crews, for example. They leased pit crews from us in the early days. They now have an amazing facility, do a great job. They do their pit crews themselves. But there will be a point of time where they'll be totally self-sufficient. But for now, yeah, they're, I mean, just think of it as you've kind of got Toyota that works with both of us. Many of the things that we do kind of go through a funnel and make their way to 2311. They're actually in our competition meetings. So their drivers and our drivers are downloading every week. So now we have scale. We have different feedback from different crew chiefs, from different drivers. People ask me, how do I feel when they win? In a perfect world, I'd love them to finish 5th and 6th every week right after our 4. They're kind of like relatives, not immediate family. But they're part of the Toyota family. They're a customer of ours. We want to deliver more value than they're paying us. And I think we do, or they wouldn't be doing it. People ask, what do we get out of it? Again, I mentioned there's know-how, there's value in putting more heads together. Obviously, the revenue that they pay us, 100% goes back into feeding the machine and going fast. Again, back to the mission, that revenue just helps us go fast. And that's another engineer we can hire, another piece of equipment that, by the way, helps them also. It indirectly goes back to helping them. So it's all feeding the machine towards our mission of going fast.
You've had the opportunity to work with Coach Gibbs for quite some time, not only one of the most accomplished owners in NASCAR and all of motorsports, but one of the most accomplished people in the history of American sports. What does Coach's involvement and leadership mean, and how does it drive the culture of Joe Gibbs Racing?
It's everything. I mean, I've compared it often to, what influence did Steve Jobs have on Apple? I mean, it's hard to separate Joe Gibbs Racing from the man himself. And, there's a reason he's in 2 professional sports Hall of Fames. When you ask what sets him apart, honestly, my question would be, how long do you have? Where do I even start? First and foremost, and this is something that I think anyone who works here knows, is Coach's sense of urgency. So what sets him apart? His sense of urgency is unlike anyone I've ever met in any business or any sport. It's what drives him. It's this relentless, nonstop pursuit of going fast that never stops. I mean, when I say that, I'm not exaggerating. And he is here 100 hours a week. He is all in. So that's another part of it. Is included in that is Coach doesn't expect anyone to do anything he won't do himself. I mean, in coaching, he slept in the office 4 nights a week. He was there longer than anyone. He's here in the morning. He's here at night. He goes to every race. He is all in. And I think this sense of urgency pushes all of us always to be better. I tell the story, one time we won the championship with Kyle Busch, and we were in victory lane, and Coach was grinding over what time we were getting in the next day to talk about 3 or 4 changes we needed to make during the off season. And I literally had to say, Coach, we just won the championship. Let's enjoy it tonight and talk about that tomorrow. But it's this push, this drive. And again, that permeates through the whole building. It can be difficult, don't get me wrong, but high performing teams almost always have a leader with a sense of urgency that's pushing, that's not settling. And then again, woven into that is the way Coach treats people, and that he cares for everybody here, and that people, Coach, he wants us to be doing well as humans. He cares about our soul. And I'll talk about JD in a little bit, who really demonstrated that. So when you weave in somebody who relationally loves you, cares about you, and also inspires you to be better at everything you do. I mean, no one wants to disappoint Coach. That's what it all starts with. Me, everybody, you go to work every day wanting to do right by Coach because you love the guy so much. And I think everyone in the building feels that, senses that.
Appreciate that. I had the good fortune to be able to work fairly closely with the team and Joe directly and during my time at McDonald's. And I, my father passed away last year, and I was invited to his Football Hall of Fame induction, and my father got to meet Coach. And I think he came to an NHRA race as well in Pennsylvania. And I mean, just the mark that it left on my father, and then in turn me, just seeing that, because there was a kindness to him. You know how exceptional he was. And even when we had to end that NHRA relationship that we had with JGR, just the professionalism with everything that he did when I had that conversation with him is just amazing. So, clearly, as you know, a big fan. But you also mentioned JD. Now, I know JD is someone that you grew up with. You were friends with him from a young age. And JD, he left, as his father has, left an indelible mark on this sport. And he was truly one of the kindest people I've ever been around, like one of the greatest people you'll ever meet, that that no matter where you saw him, it was always going to be a positive interaction. So because of your closeness with him, I just wanted you to share a little about the Legacy Fund that you're involved with, as well as just any memories or things you can share about the legacy that JD has left on this team and the sport.
Well, thanks for that. And I'll start with, JD had a way of making everybody feel like they were his best friend. And I had the privilege of actually being his best friend. And it was just a huge honor. And what you described, the way I say it is, JD treated people like a soul and not a transaction. And that inspires me literally every day. That as a leader, what a great rule to live by. Treat everyone like a soul and not a transaction. Because we all know what it's like to be treated like a transaction. I certainly know in my career, time and time again, and that looks like whether it's someone coming up to you at the racetrack, but they're looking over your shoulder at who the next person they're going to get to, or someone getting to me because they want to get to Coach or they want to get to someone else. And, I would get my hopes up early in my career. Hey, maybe they're actually calling to talk to me. And I knew it was coming. I knew it was. So could you talk to Coach, and again, I get it. Part of that was my job, but you know what it's like to be treated like a transaction. And JD, you never had an interaction with him where you didn't feel like JD recognized that you were an actual soul and had value. And so I think it's a great lesson as leaders when we're treating our own people, treating customers, treating the people at the grocery store. So that to me was a big part of it. And honestly, if you ask me, like, what is my purpose? What is in terms of my role? And in many ways, first and foremost, I feel like I am the guardian of the mission and culture that JD left at Joe Gibbs Racing. Like I knew JD. I know what his purpose was here at JGR, and with him gone, I feel like that's my job. I'm the guardian of that. Like, how can we make sure our mission and the culture here at Joe Gibbs Racing stays the way it was as JD dreamed it to be? And how can I be the catalyst to make that happen? And so, and all four of his boys are around. 2 of them are on the pit crew, and 2 of them are coming. And so that's a joy for me, for sure. JD and I served together. There's a ministry called Young Life, which is a Christian outreach to high school and adolescents. And both of us served on the board of Young Life Urban here, which serves the under-resourced high schools in Charlotte. JD really had a heart for. And so that's been something, when he passed away, Melissa set up a legacy fund that exclusively funds urban ministry here through Young Life in Charlotte. And that's been a joy to see that grow and to see all of his boys involved in that ministry to this day. And that's really at the core of what JGR is about here. You don't ever see Coach or JD beating their chests about it, but I can tell you behind the scenes that Coach views this as a ministry. Like, we are in full-time ministry, we just get to race cars. But the way that we treat people, the way that we act, the excellence with which we do things is a ministry. And we darn well better be good at it because we're not called to be average at stuff. And if we were the 10th best race team, you wouldn't be talking to me and no one would care what we think. That's another 𝗍𝗲𝗻, by the way. Nobody cares what you think if you stink. So if you better be good at what you do if you want to have any influence at all in anything. That's all. It's all kind of comes from, what I've learned with my years with JD.
Well, you've learned a lot and you've tried to impart a lot. I want to talk to you about the book that you published about 4 years ago called Taking the Lead, Winning Business Principles That Fuel Joe Gibbs Racing. Give us an overview of the book and what were you trying to impart to your readers in that?
Yeah, quick story. My father worked with the CIA, which my sisters and I didn't know until I was in high school and he retired. And we were like, oh, that explains a lot. We were all born in foreign countries. My dad was gone all the time. Super interesting, brilliant guy, spoke multiple languages, blah, blah, blah. He was working on a book when he got ill and he ended up passing away before he wrote the book. And, my sisters and I and my sons, we all kind of never got to hear this amazing story that my dad was going to tell. And that was back in 2010 when I lost my dad. And I decided then, and keep in mind at this point, JD wasn't sick. I wasn't the president of Joe Gibbs Racing, but I still said, I want to write a book so that someday my sons will know the amazing story of me going from intern to the way God's really blessed Joe Gibbs Racing. So for 10 years, I started keeping notes on my phone, principles I'd think of. Hey, this is a story I want to write down. Well, obviously in there, JD ends up getting sick. I end up taking his job. The story really takes shape of, wow, this is a story that I want to tell, but it wasn't because I want to beat my chest. Yes, I went from unpaid intern to president, but I wanted to encourage people. Number one, I'm average at almost everything. Like I am really an example of you often see, well, hey, Tom Brady, he was the greatest quarterback, or this person was, I mentioned Steve Jobs. He was brilliant. I'm not. God, and the Bible's full of God using average men to accomplish extraordinary things. And the way that this race team was put together is very similar, that I had a part in this. And I also really wanted to say, look, I've had a front row seat. I've probably spent more time with Joe Gibbs than his wife over the last 30 years. So I got a front row seat to greatness. What are the things that I learned from him that I can impart on other people? And so it was a combination of, I hope I can encourage that person that's not really sure what they're going to do with their life when they're in college, or someone who's stuck in a chapter of their, I always talk about our life as a book, and there's pages and even whole chapters that kind of stink, but they're preparing us for the next chapter. And some people get stuck in that chapter of their life and they're like, man, I feel lost. And I was hoping my book would encourage some folks, because I've been there. And again, average guy getting to do something extraordinary hopefully encourages a lot of people.
So the book is Taking the Lead, Winning Business Principles That Fuel Joe Gibbs Racing. So available everywhere. I imagine
and all
there's
the
one thing.
Proceeds benefit the JD Gibbs Legacy Fund.
Yeah,
so I can shamelessly plug it because I don't make anything off of it.
That's awesome. I do have to say, the introduction by Joe in the book, talking about you as watching you play football in the yard with JD, that really was great.
I appreciate it. No, and I had no idea he was I was like, I didn't even know he remembered that. I remembered that. I remember playing football out in his yard, and I was always the smallest.
Tim, can you imagine? You're out there and like coaches there watching you play football,
no.
and he's judging everything.
I'm glad I didn't know he was watching. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I would have been cut. He would have called me in. The Turk would have come to my room and said, your coach wants to see you, bring your playbook.
I had some wheels, I will say that, but I did not have the size, unfortunately.
So we know that private equity is a big part and a growing part of everything sports. You do have a strategic investment from Harris Blitzer Sports Entertainment. Anything you could share in terms of what that's meant positively for the organization? Obviously still owned by the family.
Yeah, no, in 5 or so years ago, we kind of set out to say, hey, what would it look like if we could take on a minority partner? Again, we still want to run it, but if we could get some know-how, as again, the sponsorship landscape was changing in many ways, some people that have the business discipline of some other sports that maybe could really help us. And all that to say, it really had to be the right partner. And honestly, the HBSC partnership was like a match made in heaven. And keep in mind, they came and talked to us before the Commanders purchase. So they wanted NASCAR in their portfolio. I think they were attracted to the performance here. Most of their other teams, they operate, so this is a little different for them. But Josh Harris, David Blitzer came in, and I'll share, if I could share a quick story, that hopefully isn't too private, but I think both would be encouraged to hear this. I think the first time that Josh and David were here meeting with Coach led our meeting off with about 30 minutes about our philanthropy. He didn't start with, this is how many wins we have. It was, this is what we're about. These are all the ministries around the world that we support. This is behind the scenes kind of what's important to us. And they made the comment, hey, I think that's the first time someone started off with that. That's how we know we're like-minded, because that's exactly where, and it was instantly, hey, we are aligned philosophically on that. Really good guys. I mean, brilliant, very smart. Scott, Tad, that whole group that we work with there, they've been an exceptional partner. I hope they would feel the same way. We thought they were all there with us at Phoenix. We thought we were going to get them a championship trophy. We were this close. We really wanted to win that one for them. But I think everywhere from, Tim, you mentioned the connection with Campbell's and beginning to make introductions to many of the partners with their sports teams. And the beauty of us is many of their teams' fan bases don't play well together, like the Devils and the Sixers. Those have different fan bases. We're neutral. We're Switzerland. So the race team kind of can spread across all of them, and we're more of a national buy than a regional buy. So I think partners of each of their teams could make sense with racing. I think they've helped us everywhere with budgeting, just with any number of things of how to run an efficient business. And so I think we're just getting started with them, and it's really been a thrill for us to meet them, just learn from them, because again, super, super smart and good human beings. I mean, really just good people.
Before we let you go, we have 2 questions that we'd like to ask all our guests. So here goes. The first one is,
where'd your career get started? Where'd you start it?
So I'll give the short version. So I did have a connection, and often we get an opportunity because we know someone. JD and I knew each other from high school. I got a chance to be an unpaid intern when they were starting up the race team, thought it would be 6 months. Moved to Charlotte sight unseen, slept on a floor. They put me in a broom closet because they didn't have anywhere to stick me. And I said this early on, and for anyone listening that's kind of still not sure what they're going to do, I learned early on that the who was more important than the what. And what I mean by that, we could have been selling coat hangers. It didn't matter. The who, Joe Gibbs, the guy that I admired, I wanted to be around him. So I didn't care what. The what is going to change over your career, but the who isn't. And so if you have a choice between, hey, maybe exactly what I want to do, but not for the who, versus, well, that might be exactly what I want to do, but the who, always pick the who. So I learned early on the who was important with Coach Gibbs, and I wanted to make myself indispensable and said, I'm never going to say that's not my job. I'm going to do whatever I can do to deliver more value than I'm paid. Super low bar when you're an unpaid intern, by the way. But as it grew, it was, hey, how can I deliver more than I cost throughout my whole career? And that 32 years later, I've never had a resume. I'm still here. But it started with, never say that's not my job. Be that locker room team player that's indispensable, that they say, he ain't the best, he ain't the smartest, but we can't do without that guy. That's something you control 100%. So that's how kind of it all started.
I'm not sure we need to ask the second question. That was amazing.
I was going to say, the only reason we would ask you the second question, Dave, is to get a bonus for our listeners, which is, what one piece of advice would you have?
If you always deliver more than you cost, you will never be without a job. Never say that's not my job. And also just know it is not going to go exactly as you've probably played it out in your mind. This is what my job's going to look like. This is what my career progression is going to look like. It's not going to look exactly like that. And that's okay. You got to be okay with that. You got to control what you can control. Come in every day with the things that you control. It sounds very cliche. I will say this, and people hear me say this all the time. There's 2 types of people. There's fountains and there's drains. And there's the people who suck the life out of every conversation, and there's people who breathe life into every one of it. That is a choice you make. And I can say, as someone who hires now, I don't want to be around a drain. I don't care how talented you are. If you have a bad attitude and you are not a team person and you're not making those around you better, I don't want you on my team. And so that is a choice you make. That, are you a problem identifier or a problem solver? That's all part of being a fountain. And those are things you control. So don't get discouraged. My career, again, I started in a broom closet, sleeping on a floor, got paid nothing. and had to tell my high-achieving dad, who had these huge aspirations for me, I work in a garage for nothing in a closet in Charlotte, North Carolina. I mean, literally, you can imagine what a failure I thought I was the first year or two of my career.
Well, congrats for sticking that out and, of course, achieving all the great success and all the things that you've done to help bring this organization to the pinnacle of NASCAR racing. It's unbelievable what you guys have done. And thank you for sharing all the stories about what it means beyond what happens on the racetrack, because I think that's super important. You tied up a lot of very interesting things, Dave. Can't thank you enough for spending some time with us.
I enjoyed it, and again, appreciate you guys. You all do a great job, so thanks for having me today.
We are back. Thank you again to Dave Alpern, president of Joe Gibbs Racing. What a phenomenal guest. David leads one of the most successful, if not the most successful, teams in all of NASCAR, and geez, what great insight, what great advice he had. So now is the time in the show where we take a look forward, we give shout outs. What do you have on your mind now?
A couple quick things, Tim. One, we're not going to be talking that much about baseball unless the scandal stuff keeps going on, but I just wanted to give a shout out to A's first baseman and former Wake Forest Demon Deacon standout Nick Kurtz on being named American League Rookie of the Year. So there are a couple reasons. In addition to him being a Demon Deacon and having one of the most memorable games in Major League history this past July against the Astros, where he hit 4 home runs and 6 overall hits, he also has one of the great nicknames in baseball, maybe right up there, maybe just behind Big Dumper, but his nickname is the Big Amish, which I just think is a great nickname. So congratulations to Nick Kurtz.
Yeah, won in a unanimous vote.
The coaching carousel situation might have just hit an interesting point with apparently LSU's Board of Supervisors might be looking at figuring out a way that Brian Kelly was let go for a cause, which means his $54 million buyout won't go through. So there is some legal action probably to come. Both sides kind of staking their claim, but it just adds another level of absurdity to all the stuff going on in the coaching carousel. And lastly, I want to say, because I brought this up last week about my disappointment, and then it was hitting me personally with the YouTube TV and the Disney feud that's going on over the carriage rates. YouTube TV announced, I think just a couple days ago, that they were going to offer a $20 credit. I don't know if that's supposed to be monthly or what, but to subscribers because of the lack of the Disney channels on it. But rather than just refunding or not charging you or whatever, they made it a credit that you had to go in and claim, which really pisses me off because I probably won't. I'll be one of the millions of people that won't do that, and therefore they'll end up saving some money on that. But, hey, I am looking at my alternatives. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, we will have to have a special episode called The Decision with David Morrow.
And Google, by the way, you're lucky that I let you off the hook on your ridiculous Google, cloud MLB stuff, that the important data that you were talking about was, whether the players when they came off the field touched the line or how many times they tapped the plate with the bat, like stuff that has nothing to do with the performance, but you were making it seem like you did. I let you off the hook. I didn't say that until now. So straighten this thing out.
What is this, Festivus?
It's right before the holiday season. It's the airing of the grievances.
Okay, well, sorry.
They crossed the line on this thing, and so all of this stuff's going to come out.
We've had a number of passings within the sports world this past week or so. Another one I wanted to mention was Coach Lenny Wilkens. Phenomenal player, phenomenal coach, native New Yorker, led the 1996 men's Olympic team to an Olympic medal, gold medal. Tragic story, Marshawn Nealand, Dallas Cowboy, apparently suffered from bouts of depression and mental illness, killed himself after a chase with police. I can only imagine what it's like being a member of that organization and having to go on and play the rest of your season with those heavy hearts. It just goes to show you that professional athletes are not immune from the things that affect the rest of us in society, namely things like depression and mental illness and stuff like that. Yeah. And then on a much lighter note, I will be making my first of hopefully many trips up to Ithaca this weekend to watch the Big Red play hockey. They're actually having Ken Dryden night on Friday night, where they will be honoring the late, great Cornell netminder. He went on and did a couple other things after that, but
yeah. No one remembers that he was a standout for Montreal for so many years.
Stand out and stand up, because he had that famous pose of him. He was 6'4", which back then was big for a goalie.
Yeah,
now it's almost standard size.
I know, he seemed so massive back in the day. Like, I'm like, how is anyone ever going to get a puck by this guy? I remember how annoying that was to me.
Not many people did.
No, right.
Not many people did. Yeah, he one of two numbers of hockey players at Cornell that have been retired. The other one, 25, Joe Nieuwendyk. So despite all the great players that have come through the Cornell system, those are the two that have had their numbers retired.
Huh, interesting.
And then they got a new coach, a guy by the name of Casey Jones. Cornell grad. And the first thing Carolyn asked was he in the engineering school? He was not, but he had success as a head coach at Clarkson. He was the associate head coach last year. So
that's a very good joke by your wife.
Absolutely
impressive.
The other question that would have been easily asked is, was he high on cocaine when he was driving that train?
Right.
Okay.
Well, I'm sure she based the reference on not just the legacy of Casey Jones as an engineer, but from the Dead song. So yeah,
I'm sure.
Because
all right,
she's with it.
Let's wrap it up. Thank you to our listeners. Thank you again to Dave Alpern and Joe Gibbs Racing. Thank you, David. Please check us out, dpandmcgee.com. Find us wherever you find your favorite podcast. Like, subscribe, follow. And comment. We would love to hear more comments about our lists last week about our top 10 favorite sports films. David, we have to get your sister on and get her take. She basically called for my man card, by the way.
She did. It was so funny that she did it, but I want to make that point on the show that I did in that post is my family, the guys in the Fez, my family, they all feel like they know you. So she was kind of acting a little surprised, like, how could he not have it? But my kids made their list, and the one that they were kind of busting me on that neither of us had on the list, which was The Sandlot. And it's cool that they like it, though, because it's the kind of the youthful thing. I said, well, I had Bad News Bears on that. Yeah.
It came along at a time when we wouldn't necessarily have been the audience for that, wouldn't necessarily have watched with our kids.
The point is, I love that they liked it, and I love that kind of that connection to a sport anyway. So
yes, no, it is. From what I understand, it's a great movie. Topps, the baseball card company, actually did an insert set several years ago with characters from the Sandlot, including some autograph cards from some of the actors in the movie. All right, that's it. Until next time, he's DP, I'm McGhee, and we'll talk soon.